Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman and members of your commission. I received a letter from you dated December 2nd requesting that I appear here today. Initially, I was at a loss as to the particularities with which this commission wanted me to appear because commencing 1980, April 12th, fortunately I was out of Liberia, and for that reason I'm still alive, because many of my colleagues were rounded up, taken to the BTC and killed. I stayed away from Liberia from that period until early February of 1991, when I first returned to Liberia. And except for periodic moves away from Liberia due to violence and internal turmoil, I've endeavored to stay here in Liberia. The primary reason for my decision to stay in Liberia is because of the love that I have for this country. For me, God is first, my country next, and then my family, in that order. So therefore, it was of utmost importance to me to return to Liberia and to be here to share the good times and the bad times with the people of Liberia. I will briefly touch upon the questions posed by you because maybe this is what has attracted the attention of the Commission with reference to the Whig Party. Like most Liberians of the 20th century, I too was a member of the Whig Party. Because of my official position as Attorney General and Minister of Justice of Liberia, I was put on the executive committee of the party. Subsequently, I was elected as second First National Chairman of the party for a very short while, and then thereafter I was elected as Vice National Chairman of the party. On one occasion, I was in the office of the then President William R. Tolbert, and I asked him, what was this all about? And he said to me, he says, you are the bridge. You are the transition between the old and the new. And as the old order changeth, yielding place to new, we'll expect you to be that bridge between the young people and the older ones. I said, fine. Subsequently, on May 13th, 1979, I was coming from Conala in now Maghibie County, and I stopped in then Bentall to wish the President happy birthday. Whilst sitting in his Palava, we started to discuss matters related to the party and the fact that surely there were serious problems. And I said to him, well, we have people like PPP and Moja that we have to contend against. And therefore, it is my suggestion that we proceed to bring new blood into the leadership of the party. so that this new blood can carry us forward. And he said, okay, I leave it with you to go ahead and do. It was at that time that I recommended that we have people that would be close to the General Secretary, and the term is General Secretary and not Secretary General. Okay? So the General Secretary of the party, who was then Honorable Robert I.E. Bright, successor to McKinley A.D. Shield. I was a relatively young man compared with these other individuals, but I felt that if I had a role to play, it was incumbent upon me to do it and do it to the best of my ability. Predicated thereupon, I proceeded to recommend that we employ young Liberians to man responsible positions in the party. This was done, but it was not done in a manner in which I thought it should have been done, because the people that were appointed were people that I did not feel were possessed of the sort of substance and political acumen that was necessary at that time to help lead us from whence we were to where we should go. Therefore, I went back to the president, who was then standard bearer of the party, and suggested to him that some drastic steps still need be taken. It was at that time that a decision was made for the party to meet again in Bentall and to sit there and to discuss with all of the people how best to move the party forward. What I had seen was the fact that due to the strength of that party within the country, it had lost contact with the people at the grassroots. And there needed to be a revisitation so that the people at the bottom rung could have their say and we could have movements from down to up as regards party policy and what have you, rather than up to down. Because with the up to down, the people on the ground had no part to play in the decision-making processes. So therefore, we had this meeting in Bentall, and at this meeting it was decided that we needed to have a Congress, at which time we would revisit most of what was important with the party. The meeting was scheduled for late October of 1979 in Buchanan, Grand Bassa County. We went to Buchanan, but before going there was a task force of 18 persons created to go all around this country and to talk with the people of the country to find out what their thoughts were about where the party was and where it needed to go. They then reported to the Congress in Buchanan in October when we met there. I personally was unhappy with the conduct of the affairs of the party, because although I was first vice national chairman, the day-to-day running of the party was the responsibility of the general secretary. And I felt that I would do one of two things: either run to become the general secretary of the party, or divest myself from any major role whatsoever in the party. So I made this fact known to different people, and most especially to the second Vice National Chairman, then Honorable Jackson Doe. And he and I discussed it and decided that we would cut a deal, that he would support me for General Secretary and I would support him for first Vice National Chairman. And we took that to Buchanan with us. We discussed it amongst the rank and file. There were about 700 delegates at the Congress. And about midnight, the night before the vote, there was a call from the standard bearer asking Partisan Doe and myself to please come and visit with him. We went there. And he said, "Oh, I've heard what you all are doing," which would mean unseating some of the people in authority here in the party. He said, "But I'm not going to interfere. You all go ahead and let the ball fall wherever it does, in effect." So the next day we went, and I opposed the General Secretary, who was then Robert I.E. Bright, and I think overwhelmingly I won, probably 600 to 100, something like that. I won. Jackson Doe ran and became the first Vice National Chairman of the party. At that time, Richard Abraham Henrys had been legal counsel of the party for more than 20-some years. But before, I had also been chairman of the committee to redraft the rules and regulations of the party. And the committee met at the home of Partisan Joseph Finley in Buchanan. And one of the things we decided at that time, as a matter of policy, that henceforth there will be no more than 2 persons from any county sitting on the national level of the party. So therefore, when Clarence Parker had been elected as General Treasurer of the party, and I had been elected as General Secretary of the party, the positions for Montserrat County were filled. So Honorable Richard Henrys wanted to run again, but due to the new rules and regulations that had just been adopted by the party, he couldn't run. And so the fight were between 2 people from Grand Bassa County, Joseph Finley and Toy C. Bernard, for legal counsel. And Joe Finley prevailed over Toy Bernard, and he therefore became the legal counsel to the party. We also at that time decided that no one who was an official of government would hold any position of authority in the county parties. So it meant that we had to go to all of the counties and supervise elections where there would be elected a local chairman for the party and a local secretary for the party. But those could not be people that held any portfolio in government. We went around and were doing that in most of the counties up until the time of the coup d'etat in 1980. When it comes to the question of the youth of the party trying to advance certain ideas that ran against the leadership of the party, I would say that is an erroneous assertion. It is an erroneous assertion because of the fact that most of what the youth wanted, we carried forward. I remember at a meeting in the president's office where I guess the two youngest people in the meeting were Cecil Dennis and myself, but they were with leadership, national leadership, and the question came about as to certain issues that should take place. On one side was Reginald Townsend, who was chairman of the party, Frank Tolbert, Richard Henrys, and someone else, I forget now who. On the other side was Cecil Dennis and myself. At the end of the day, we prevailed. We prevailed. And the standard bearer went along with us rather than these others. When I became General Secretary, what I did, I determined that we would have wide geographic distribution of the leadership within the party itself, not elected but appointed leadership. Therefore, I went to Bong County and selected Mr. Sengbe Johnson from Bong County to come and be the public affairs chief of the party. I went to Lofa County and appointed Mr. Frederick Gobowoli at that time to come and head the political wing of the party. For the women's wing, head of it for a while was Mrs. Minerva Johnson, also from Lofa County via Sino County. Then I went to Cape Mount and got from Cape Mount Mr. Mohamedou Jones and had him working there with us. And lastly, I kept Mr. He was from Riverside County. He was Minister of Information under the late President Doe, Emmanuel Buya. And I kept him there as my special assistant. Okay, so these were the officers, and they were all relatively young men from different parts of the country. So I would not repeat that we listened to the younger people of the party. Now, one of the issues raised by you in your letter to me had to do with, I shall read the portion thereof. In addition, during testimonies of one of our witnesses, it was alleged that former President Samuel Doe was spuriously made chairman of the Whig Party to ensure the withdrawal of offshore funds from the accounts of the party in banks in the Caribbean. This allegation, I'll continue, this allegation is of particular interest to the Commission's investigation since the TWP raised funds by taxing its members. Well, I was started by saying I don't know why if the Whig Party taxes members to raise funds, it would be of particular interest to this body, but that's an aside. Coming to the germane issue, I was out of Liberia from 6th April 1980 until early February 1991. So, therefore, what obtained in Liberia during that period of time, I have no actual or certain knowledge of. and therefore it would be difficult for me to give testimony in respect of. I do recall that there were many untrue allegations going on in Liberia and in the United States, where I was accused of having taken monies belonging to the Whig Party for my own personal benefit. And that disturbed me and disturbed my family no little, because of the fact that people can say whatsoever they want about me, but when they challenge my integrity, then it is a serious challenge. This persisted for a while. Initially they said that, oh, Clarence Simpson had taken $25 million of the Whig Party's monies and was using it for himself. And then from 25 million, it came down to $5 million. But the $5 million figure prevailed in the minds of people for a substantial period of time. Therefore, I made up my mind that whatever funds the Whig Party had abroad, I personally would remove myself from any interest whatsoever in those funds and turn them over to the government of Liberia if it were properly handled. So I met with Mr. Seward Boone, who was Consul General of Liberia in New York, and I said to him that I would be willing to assist in having those funds turned over to the Liberian government in the event Mr. Charles McGill, who was as Assistant General Secretary to Mr. Parker, and Mr. Jackson Doe, who was Vice National Chairman and second to Mr. Chairman Reginald Townsend, if they got the two of them to agree to having these funds made available to the Liberian government. But in order to ensure that there was no duress in the process, I wanted them to take these gentlemen to the American Embassy in Monrovia and have them sign whatever documentation was prepared in the presence of a notary at the American Embassy. After which time, that document, the signature of the notary at the U.S. Embassy, which usually is the Vice Consul, will be attested to by the Foreign Minister in Liberia, who at that time was Mr. Ernest Eastman. And they proceeded to get all of this documentation together and gave them to the then Minister of Justice, Mr. Scott, I think his name was. And so Mr. Scott flew to America with these documents. I was in Boston. I flew from Boston to New York, met with him and Mr. Seward Boone at the Liberian Consulate, and they invited a notary public, and I, as General Secretary of the party, signed in the presence of the notary public, authorizing the disbursal of those funds to the Liberian government. Now, from that day till this day, I've never heard of how those funds left the Equator Bank. They left the Equator Bank and were sent to the Liberian government, but how, upon arrival in Liberia, those funds were put in the coffers of the treasury of the Liberian government, till this day, I don't know. I was not here. But this was probably circa 1983, 82, 83, when I was still in America, staying away because I valued my life. And this is what happened as regards those funds. When I came back to Liberia, in 1991, I think it was in May of that year, the Whig Party had a meeting at a junior high school on Newport Street. I think it was around the 18th of May or thereabouts of 1991. And I went, and all the relevant documentation pertaining thereto, I presented to the party, who was then headed by Mr. Momo Jones as chairman, Mr. Arthur Bedell as first vice chairman, and Mr. Maxwell Carter as general secretary. I didn't come and challenge any of them for their new positions or what have you, nor did I ask them how they obtained those positions. I just said, these are papers relevant to the party, here they are. And in a very public gathering, with hundreds of people present, I presented those documents to them. And since that time, what has happened about that, I don't know. Okay, this almost closes the issue of the Whig Party, but I will go further. There were many speculations in Liberia about Clarence Simpson and why he had come back to Liberia. It was difficult for me to convince many of the people in Liberia that I had come back home because this was my home, because I loved this country and I wanted to spend the rest of my life here. So I had a press conference at my offices right here on Center Street, invited the press, and I made a statement. And the statement was that Clarence Simpson was at that time resigning any affiliation with the Whig Party or any other political organization in this country, for that matter, and more besides, except for my church, I will hold no position in any organization or government from thenceforth. And I was hoping that that would put to rest the whole question of any political ambitions that I may have had. What is always important to me is Liberia. Where Liberia is now, where she was before, and where she's headed to from this point on. Maybe before I go there, there's one other point that I should like to raise about misconceptions raised by people who have heretofore testified before this commission as it pertains to Clarence Simpson. I think that I've been told that Mr. Gonglo, the current Solicitor General of Liberia, came and made assertions to the effect that I was a member of Charles Taylor's NPFL. And if that is so, that he made such a statement, it was a mendacious statement. It was devoid of any veracity whatsoever, for I have never ever in my life been associated with Charles Taylor, nor his force, nor his political party, nor anything appertaining to him. I think I met him in Liberia after the coup. Before the coup, President Tolbert sent him to me once to sit and chat. Before that, I met him at my sister's house in Boston on one occasion. And except for those two occasions, I only met Taylor once, as I met most of the leaders of the warring faction. I left Monrovia and I went to Banga to find out what he was all about. And I had about a 3-hour meeting with him, after which I left. But I was able, during those conversations, to discern the sort of individual he was and where he wanted to lead this country to. And from what I could gather, it was nothing that I would ever in my life want to have a part of in association with him. So that's that. And I heard that another gentleman came and testified and said that I, Clarence Simpson, when I was Minister of Justice, gave him $2,000 or offered him $2,000 as a bribe to go and perjure himself before a court of law. Before becoming Minister of Justice, I was on the Supreme Court bench of this country for 7 years. I went there from the time I was 31 years of age and stayed there until I was 38. And my records are there with the court. And my record as a lawyer is around and permanently put. So how he could come and tell such a bold-faced lie to this commission, I don't know. I don't know the gentleman's name or whatsoever, but I was told that such a person came here before this commission and made such a false statement. And I want you to know that it was false, and he must have intended it to be false. And if he were someone that took an oath here, then I think he should be held chargeable for perjury before this commission. Proceeding further now to Liberia, where it is now, where it has been, and where we hope to see it go in future. Let me first and foremost say to this commission and to all Liberians listening, these 43,000 square miles constitute a great country. I am proud to be a Liberian. I wouldn't want to be anything else but a Liberian. I love this country. I love its people. Every day I drive along the streets and I see not sad faces, but smiling faces. Faces of hope and aspiration on the part of our beleaguered public. What I see are people in anticipation of a better day for this country and for themselves. I've heard people come and say on several occasions that what we have here is a country of people who, thank you, of people who conspire against each other, whether because of tribal differences, because of religious differences, and what have you. I personally believe that those are bold-faced lies. That is the opinion of Clarence Simpson. Clarence Simpson feels that what we need in Liberia is clarity of vision in establishing a way forward, and that can come about only through educating our young people. We have a population now where the mean age in Liberia is around 21 years of age. We have a situation where most of the people today are very young in this country. So it gives us a wonderful opportunity, an opportunity to see that the educational process is put in place to educate these young people. And we should not stop only at what we see in Monrovia and its environs, but we should go out into the several counties, into the villages, the hamlets, and see how we can bring education to the young people in this country. For it is only through education that we'll be able to move forward. But this must be done with a level playing field. We must have a level playing field where my grandchild living in Liberia and your grandchild and those young children in the villages and towns, they will be given equal opportunities. Equal opportunities to educationally advance. That's where we stop a lot of the problems that we have here today. These problems are not because of crime and Mano or Gio or Bassa or Vi or Gola or what have you. No. The problem basically has to do with education of our people. And that's where the emphasis of this country and this government should be placed foremost. I hear people talk about warring factions and what have you. Ladies and gentlemen of this commission, that is a joke. This whole issue of warring factions is a joke. From 1943, when Franklin Delano Roosevelt and his Secretary of State Edward R. Stettinius Jr. came to Liberia to visit their troops in Robertsville, they invited the late President Edwin James Barclay and the President-elect William V. Tubman to visit America. They went and visited America. And during the time of that visit, there was an entente cordiale established between William V. Tubman and the United States government. That entente, in effect, stated, and with parole, it stated that the United States will control our foreign policy in Liberia. And they, in turn, will give assistance to Liberia, and the domestic affairs of the country could be governed any way that Tubman wanted it governed. You will see that during the whole period of Tubman's reign in this country, never one day you heard of human rights violations. Mind you, that Declaration of Human Rights was done, what, December 12, 1948, somewhere around there. But you never heard of any human rights violation during that period. Why? Because Tubman could do whatever he wanted. Whatever he wanted with anyone. Send you to BTC, send you to Belayala, send you anywhere. And there wasn't a word mention of it. There wasn't a word mention of it. Okay? The problem started with the death of Tubman. At the time of the death of Tubman, let me just back up a little bit. You will recall that in 1960 and 1961, there was this great rush to independence on the continent of Africa. And during this great rush to independence, there were many new leaders emerging. Some of them had been through the struggles of trying to gain independence. Like next door, Ahmed Sekou Touré, like Kwame Nkrumah, like Azikiwe in Nigeria, like Nelson Mandela in South Africa, like Mugabe and this other fellow who used to come with him, stout fella. Anyway, Joshua and Como, okay? Those men, because they used to come here, and they enjoyed the largesse of Tubman. Tubman used to hand them purses to go back to help their causes. So therefore, regardless of his association, relationship with the American government, American people, these men would never try to slap the hand that fed them when they were in need. So they let Tubman go ahead, and a good example is in 1948. In 1948, this whole question of Israel and Israel becoming a state evolved at the United Nations. When that happened, the question was, where would Liberia put her vote? On the side of the Arab states who were against Israel's emergence as a state, or would it be on the other side? Up until the night before the vote, it was assumed by everyone, and commitments had been made, that Liberia would be on the side of the African brothers. However, that night, a telegram reached Washington and then to New York that the vote had to be for Israel, because that's what America wanted. So the next day, the vote was for Israel, and Israel became an independent state. Liberia had the swing vote. Liberia had the swing vote at that time. And that's what emerged as a consequence of this entente cordiale. All right. Tolbert now is president of Liberia. The first thing is, we had a problem between Guinea and La Côte d'Ivoire. They had set up a grievance and reconciliation commission of the OAU to be headed by the president of Liberia. That had been done prior to the death of Tubman. Now here we were, Tubman was dead. Tolbert was president. The meeting went on in the early days of May of 1972. Okay? Here in Monrovia, we had an array of presidents here in Monrovia, including the Emperor Haile Selassie, including the two factions. We had Habib Bourguiba coming from North Africa. We had Leopold Sédar Senghor coming from Senegal. We had all of these African leaders here in Liberia. We had Yakubu Gowon from Nigeria. He too was present. During this meeting, as you all know, the chairman is addressed as Monsieur le Président. So everybody kept addressing President Tolbert as Monsieur le Président. And Tolbert then figured, oh, this is a chance. I was then Minister of Justice and a member of the delegation. This is a chance now for me to promote myself to be chairman of the OAU one day. And I'll go ahead and use this as a means of doing so. Because he felt good with himself as he was moving around in the corridors, trying to arrange some rapprochement on which peace could be brokered. When this happened, we left then, he started to make these forays in trying to get himself situated to become head of the OAU, chairman of OAU. But most of the people in Africa felt that Liberia was too closely allied to the United States. And therefore, they didn't want to promote you know, Tolbert, who had this closeness to the United States. And therefore Tolbert decided he had to start distancing himself from the United States. Okay, starting back there in 1972. And he proceeded. He became a member of the non-aligned. At that time, Joseph Broz Tito of Yugoslavia was head of the non-aligned. They decided to convene in Cuba. He said, I'm going to Cuba. Later on, from North Africa, came a suggestion that as they have formed OPEC, for the strategic owners of petroleum, fossil fuels, to be able to get together and fix prices, the countries in the world that had raw materials should do the same. And they set up this group, and they were going to take it to the United Nations and see how they could carry it forward. Of course, this is going to be a death knell to the industrialized country who got most of their raw materials from the developing countries. As a consequence of which, they proceeded to kill it. But Tolbert was one of the leaders in that also. Okay. Next, we had the problem of the Polisarios in Northwest Africa. With the problem of the Polisario there, we had, on the one hand, Morocco being supported by the United States, where Algeria, whom they consider socialists, being supported by other countries. They wanted, the United States wanted Liberia to support Morocco. We supported Algeria. Okay? So they took that against us also. Tolbert kept going. By that time, I personally started to get fearful of what was happening. The next thing was they had problems in the Middle East, in the Gulf of Aqaba. The decision then was made by America that she wanted a rapid deployment force that would be able to come and go to the Middle East when need be. But they needed a bunkering station. And Liberia was a good place for a bunkering station because in 1935 we had signed a treaty with the United States to this effect. That treaty had been amended, I think around 1953, it had been amended, okay, that allowed for this. What America did was they came and got stellar engineers here to do the drawings. So when the nota verbal was taken to the cabinet from America requesting the installation of this bunkering station here, the then Minister of Public Works got up in the cabinet, Gabriel Tucker, and said, what these Americans take us for? Just the rubber stamp? They have come now and started already to do the design and the drawings, and now they come to us and say that they want us to approve what they're already doing. So the President Tubman says, Tolbert said, not a bit of that. If that's the case, Mr. Foreign Minister, who was T-Shaf Sherman, acting for Cecil Dennis, said, Mr. Foreign Minister, write the Americans and tell them, no, they can have no bunkering station here. And in retrospect, as I thought about it later on, I figured that that was the last nail that Tolbert drove into his own coffin. Because from that point on, they wanted him out. They wanted him out. And they did not rest until they got him out. Okay? That's 1980. 1983, April 1st. All of you remember. Remember what? The Franzamiton affair. flazometer. When they say he used the 50 millimeter, 50 caliber in trying to kill President Doe. Later on, Bob Woodward wrote a book for Bill Casey, who was head of the CIA in that period. And in that book, it is acknowledged that flazometer was set up by the United States government to come and commit that act. It's in the book. It's in the book. Okay? Come 1985, we had the problem of the attempted coup d'etat with the General Thomas Coup. We had that situation. But nobody mentioned that for months prior to this, Coup and some others were in training in Maryland in the United States to come to Liberia and launch this attack. Nobody mentioned it. Okay? Yet and still, that is what happened. The only thing is, the main man who was to do the operation got killed on the bridge. He got killed on the bridge because he came across to do a reconnaissance. And while he was reconnoitering, they discovered the truck on the other side of the bridge and opened fire, and he got killed in the crossfire. Okay. So with that, the whole plan was disrupted because Coup was to come and just take over after everything had happened and hold over until they told him what to do. Okay? All right. We went from there through 1990. 1990, this country again had a problem, this time with Taylor and Doe. With Taylor and Doe. Taylor had somewhere or other got out of prison in America, gone to Mexico, left Mexico, found his way to Ghana, and was in Ghana. He had been arrested, but some people were helpful to him in getting him free from Ghana. He left, he went to Sierra Leone next, tried to start a movement from Sierra Leone. Whilst in Sierra Leone again, he had problems. He left Sierra Leone, went to Cote d'Ivoire. From Cote d'Ivoire, he was introduced to Blaise Compaoré of Burkina Faso, and Blaise Compaoré then sent him up to North Africa to Gaddafi. And that's how his men got fired into Gaddafi to start getting their training. It put America in a very difficult position because by this time, after 1985, they wanted to see Doe out. Because there was Doe, this insignificant young man as far as they were concerned, who was here telling them that he would pay the debt, he would do this, he would do that, he would do the other. And I said, well, you know, who is this fellow to come and say this? We want him out. We want him out. Okay? That's why when Moses Wright was at Shefflin and President Doe called him and said, go to ELBC and take over, the Americans came right behind and said, no, no, no. General Coup will be talking to you all soon. General Coup will be talking to you all soon. So don't bother. Just wait. You'll get the instructions. Okay? Not that later on when they found out that this whole group were only 30-some men that had come into Liberia, and of the 30-some men that had come in here, only 7 were Liberians, and the rest were Sierra Leoneans who came here. Okay? That's when Doe called them back the second time and said, I said, go and take it over. And they went and took over ELBC. Then this whole thing started to crumble. Okay? All right. We went ahead and we started with the country being divided. Taylor in one part, the interim government, IGNU, here in another part. But all along, they were trying to call the shots on both sides of the divide. On both sides of the divide. You know, later on, when they had difficulty, all of a sudden, Prince Y. Johnson, who was in Bongmai, got brand new uniforms, got brand new weapons, and started coming to Monrovia. Where he got them from? Where he got them from? It's obvious where he got them from. Okay? Later on, as this war progressed, they finally decided, well, maybe we can get Taylor to act according to how we want him to act. So they sent this big delegation headed by Jimmy Carter. They came, we had these wonderful elections here in Liberia and all. But then, according to them, Taylor wasn't acting right. He wasn't acting correctly. So they started behind him. Then this whole question of oil and the fact that off the shores of Liberia, like the whole of the Gulf of Guinea, there's oil. And they decided that they want to control the oil in the Gulf of Guinea, the whole Gulf. They came and they expected to get it easy from Taylor. But they sent Under Secretary of State Pickering. They were Pickering here to talk to Taylor. Pickering came, met with Taylor, together with Mooney Captain, who is still here, and Louis Brown, who was the national security man, and they sat down and had a conversation, and Pickering listed the points that the U.S. wanted Taylor to follow. And said, if you follow these points, you can stay here for as long as you want. But Taylor said, who are you all to come and dictate to us? We are a sovereign state. You all can't dictate to us what to do. We will do what we feel is in the best interest of our country and our people. I don't think that Pickering was on the airplane. I don't think the plane had taken off the ground when they started forming Model. But they did that formation so rapidly that what happened was they put into Model more Muslims than they wanted to. So when they found out that Lerd was stacked with a lot of Muslims, they said, oh, we don't want to come and have another Muslim state created in Liberia. So therefore, we have to find something to counter it. They went to Pennsylvania, Philadelphia, and they formed Model. And they had Model coming down from the Ivory Coast, where Lerd was coming from Guinea. Okay? And they both, came. One was to neutralize the other. And then finally, when it was a draw, then they said, oh, let's go to Accra and set up this group. But who is they finance the group? Well, they have people living in the hotel there for free, eating free food every day, and this, that, and the other. Who? Okay? This is part of our story. I don't think the faces that I see in the streets of Liberia ladies and gentlemen, are calm faces. There are few people who during the crisis, because I was here during a lot of it, they would take opium, I don't know what you call it, drugs, and give to the young men. And when they get them on these drugs for a few days and teach them how to pull a trigger and reload an AK-47, then they'll say, all right, you are good enough, you are good to go. You'll go out and fight. But other than that, and most of the times, what did you see? You see most of those shots being fired in the air. They were not pointed at people. They were not pointed at people. Why? Because those young men were primarily interested in scaring the people away from towns and villages so they could get their goats, their chickens, and this, that, and the other to eat. That's what it was. All right? Where would these people get the monies from to buy the arms, to get the guns, the AK-47s, to get the ammunition that go along, to get the RPGs, to get what goes through them? When they were shelling Gravestone, huh? Well, did they get those arms from Guinea? Did the country release those arms? Of course not. Who made them available? Who made them available? For us to kill each other, you know, and call it something to do with tribe or this or that or the other. It had nothing to do with any of that. It had to do with the desire of these people to continue to control us and to rule us. Okay? As we stand here today, the way forward for Liberia is for all of us to get together as Liberians, to hold hands one with the other, to be our brothers' keepers, regardless of tribal groupings, regardless of religious affiliation. You know, you talk about religion. You know, you Imam, what's the difference so much between what we practice in our churches and what you practice in the mosque? The same teaching that Abraham and Jacob and Isaac and all of that, the differences are minimal. They are minimal. But they use that to try to divide us. And as long as we continue to permit that, it will subsist. It will subsist. It has to be us, within our hearts. Say, well, look, it is time for us to join together, to pull together. You know, an American once, I was in Washington, talking with some people from the Joint Chiefs. And one of the guys who was with Naval Intelligence, he said to me, he says, you know, in our country, before the Civil War, if you ask this person, who are you? They say, oh, Polish American, or I'm Italian American, or I'm German American. Say, but after that Civil War, we asked him, he says, who are you? He said, oh, I'm an American of Polish descent, or Italian descent, or what have you. First and foremost, they were Americans. So now how did we get to be that? He said the fire of that war, it welded us together into one common homogeneous people. And this is what I hope will happen to Liberia one day. He said because the crisis that's going on in Liberia now will permeate every facet of life in your country, every geographical area in your country. But in the final analysis, what it will do, it will serve as a cohesive force of bringing the people of your country together. You know, I've heard many people come here before you all and tell stories that are bold-faced lies about their participation in the crises that took place here in this country. You know, you talk about truth and reconciliation. There can be no reconciliation without truth. But one of the problems that we have here in Liberia is for too long a period of time now, we are given to lying. We are given to lying. We are given to stealing. You know? And these things that are so evil, they are against the Bible, they're against the Quran, they're against everything. And we have to try to teach our people to start to move away from that. Move away from lying. If you do something, be a man enough to accept the responsibility for your acts. Otherwise, you're a little boy, you're not a man. No matter how big a suit you can put on or how big a car you ride, you're still a little boy if you are not able to stand up and say, I did this and I did that, and I accept responsibility for it. You know? So it makes you know that before you do these things, you should go and study the consequences of them before you do it. But I think that in our case, most of the people here, I remember once, one of the first meetings that were held with the Taylor group and the rest was in Geneva. And everybody was shocked. They say, you know, these were supposed to be at war fighting each other, and you see them hugging each other, and this, that, and the other. They're hugging each other. So how is that possible? But it only shows you that deep down inside, the Liberian is a decent human being. Deep down inside, the Liberian is a good human being. People come from outside and try to bring problems here that disrupt us. They have thrown us back so many years, decades they have thrown us back in what they have done to disrupt our lives. You know, look, nobody's perfect. There were lots of things that the Truth Party did that were wrong. Okay? But they stood 13 men up on the pole and shot them, killed them. I think they paid for that. They paid the supreme price of their very lives for that. Some of them, like Cesar Dennis. Cesar Dennis and I were schoolmates. He was a year ahead of me in law school at Georgetown. You know? But Cesar came here for many years. He had nothing to do with government. He was practicing his law. All of a sudden they said, please come and be Minister of Foreign Affairs. He went. You know? Cesar, he built one house. And he was just about forced to do it by Steve Tolbert. That's all he had. You know? But he was proud to be Minister of Foreign Affairs of Liberia. And that was great for him. And he went all around trying to do good things for this country. But what do you get paid with? You get tied to the pole and get shot. But if you see the film, you will see that he stood up upright. And he stood up with his eyes open until the bullets were such that his eyes could stay open no more, and he was dead. But Cesar showed the courage of a man. He didn't run away from anything. He didn't hide from anything. Like a lot of the people here today, they come before this commission and they tell untruths. Everybody knows it, but you know. So why do they come here? Why do they come here? To fool the public? To fool you, ladies and gentlemen? You know? Why? Anyway, I think that I've taken this time that you've granted me to speak my mind about Liberia, about Liberians, and about foreign influences on what happened in this country. And we, as we try to progress, have to be forever mindful of the very precarious and treacherous road that we have to traverse as a nation. And in so doing, we have to be assured that we will travel the right way to bring preservation, tranquility, peace to our people that will aid us in our development process. I wish this commission well, and I'm hopeful that at the end of the day, the work that you've so laboriously done and continue to do here will be something that will inure benefit to our country. I thank you. Any questions? I'll be able to answer.
We thank you very much for speaking to us today from your heart, sharing your experience, your thoughts, and perspectives on how our country can make progress. We appreciate it very much, and commissioners will now ask some questions. Some on clarity, some for wanting more information, and whatever. Just to begin with, I just want to take you back a little. You said warring factions is a joke.
Say what?
Just to take you back a little, you said assertions of warring factions in Liberia is a joke. Will you throw a little bit light, and following that, Commissioner Stewart will.
You know, I think somebody asked here yesterday or sometime in past, the people that got killed, who killed them? Okay? On whose orders were they killed? Okay? You know? You have people with NPFL, you have people with LPC, you have people with ULIMO K, ULIMO J, you have people with LERD, Model, you know, former government. Huh? And these are organizations that were here in Liberia. Our country was decimated. Now, some of these leaders come before you and say, oh, we had nothing to do with that aspect of it. Then who did? Pray God, tell me. Who did if they did not? Okay? That's what I'm talking about, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. Witness. As the chairman said, for speaking from the heart. Providing insight, I would say, on a number of issues in our history, contemporary history, so to speak. And I hope you bear with me as we try to explore what you have told us and put that into perspective as a way of enhancing our understanding of events that transpired in our history. Now, you started off by saying that at the point in time as Secretary General of the party,
General Secretary, sir.
I'm sorry, as General Secretary of the party, there were concerns on the part of party officials about PPP and Moja as challengers to the status quo. As a member, as a key official of the government, of the party, at that
Of the
time,
party, sir, not the government.
of the party. And before I go further, can you please just tell us, when did you serve in the party? I know at one time you were a Minister of Justice, at one time you were Associate Justice. So if you could help us a little bit. But
The document I sent to you when your people came to interview me shows that I held 3 positions in the Liberian government. I was legal counsel for public works and utilities from 1958 until 1964. 64, I became Associate Justice of the Supreme Court of Liberia, which position I held until 1971. From 71 until 74, I was Minister of Justice. I was relieved of that position on August 10th or 12th, of 1974. Since then, I've held no position in government.